Hello everyone, TimeToGrind here, and today I wanted to talk about Gears Tactics. And I've never really been super into the tactics genre. You know, I played a little XCOM back in the day, and that like Mario vs. Rabbids game that's on the Switch, but that's pretty much the extent of it. And I'm just saying that just so you kind of have an idea of where I'm coming from in this review. You know, I'm not someone that has spent 400 hours in all the XCOM games. You know, it's just someone that's kind of new to this genre, but has a little bit of experience from it. And also, just full disclaimer, Microsoft actually gave me a copy of the game in order to make a review for you guys. You know, I never let that influence my reviews, just like staying transparent for you guys. And also, the reason this is a first impressions video instead of like a full-on review is because apparently the entire game is about 25 hours long, and I have played a ton of it. I've got a bunch of hours in the game, but I wanted to get a video out to you guys, and there's also a ton of games coming up that I want to review. So I just decided to, you know, I've played enough of it to kind of feel like I know the game and I've got a good grasp of it. But, you know, obviously I haven't been able to play the entire game. So that's kind of why it's a first impressions video. So, you know, going into it, the Gears of War franchise has always been super gritty and violent and aggressive. And Gears Tactics really attempts to translate what you know about the Gears of War franchise into a tactics genre. And in my opinion, they succeed. It's not necessarily the perfect game, and you know, not the perfect tactics game, but I think it is a good, you know, success. And so one of the ways that they, you know, kind of translate the Gears, you know, franchise into it is they do things like they throw more enemies at you total than a traditional, you know, tactics game would, but they also give you more opportunities to do things with your characters. So overall, it feels like your characters are more powerful, and you know, they're not as weak as, say, you know, a game like XCOM. You know, not saying anything bad about the game, it just, the game purposely wants you to feel like a badass. And so every character has about, you know, 3 to 4 action points, depending on a couple factors. Normally it's about 3. And with that, you can move, you can use abilities, you can fire your weapons, throw grenades, reload, and you can do any of that in any order you like and any mix of that. You don't, you know, you don't have to just move and then shoot. You can do whatever you want. So, I mean, you could move a little bit, fire a weapon, kill someone, and then move back to cover, or you could just spend all 3 action points just killing enemies if you have, you know, them lined up for it. And so in terms of how the, you know, base combat works, it kind of works just like other tactics games. You know, it's got a line of sight and different percentages to hit enemies depending on things like if they're behind cover and, you know, distance. And so obviously there's a cover system pretty similar to XCOM. And also, like, unlike some tactics games, this isn't grid based. You know, it's, you can put your characters anywhere they want on a map, and, you know, certain areas it'll show if you're giving them cover or not. And another thing is this game is just, it's very fast-paced as well, in my opinion. And one of the ways they do this is when you kill someone, sometimes, depending on how much damage you do, they don't actually fully die. They'll just go down. And so you can either shoot them and finish them off, or you can execute them. But in order to execute them, you have to run up to them and actually get, you know, in range. And so whenever you execute someone, everybody else on your team gets an additional action point. And that is a freaking huge reward. Because, I mean, if every person on your team, you know, if 3 other people all get another action point, if they have people lined up, that's potentially 3 more kills you got just by being aggressive and, you know, getting that kill. And so it really incentivizes you to keep pushing enemies and keep being aggressive because you can keep getting that momentum. And on top of that, depending on your main weapon, most people have an ability that's like a, you know, crazy chainsaw finisher that you know from the Gears franchise, or like a bayonet charge that, you know, will insta-kill most enemies. But the thing is you have to rush up to them to do that. So it's constantly keeping you aggressive and pushing forward and whatnot. And just for the executions and the chainsaw and bayonet, you know, abilities, a lot of the times it shows you these animations, and they're all super brutal and satisfying, just like you would expect and want. And I mean, anything from cutting limbs off to literally just, one of the animations was someone with a minigun. He just threw his entire minigun on top of an enemy to finish them off and crush them. And so the enemy variety in the game is pretty cool and pretty decent. You know, you have your little grunts that charge at you, trying to melee you, and, you know, for the most part, you can one-shot them with your primary weapons. You know, you've kind of got your more normal, traditional enemies that have guns and, you know, have decent amount of health. You got big brutes. They get angrier the more damage you take. You got snipers, and then obviously there's more and more enemy types. But, you know, it's a good, decent variety, and they all challenge you in different ways and make you approach, you know, situations differently. And so the gameplay gameplay itself and kind of like the maps and the worlds and the, the objectives that you have to do, it's very solid and it's very fun, and I really like the game, but it depends on how does the rest of the game hold up. So it kind of presents itself in a very linear campaign, and for me, I thought that was decent. I was like, I just want to play the game, I want to play the core gameplay, so I don't really care how it's served to me. There isn't a hub of like a million different missions that you can choose like I know some other tactics games have. It's pretty much you just play on a very specific mission, and there's cutscenes and it's a story and stuff like that, and occasionally it'll show, like you'll have a choice of 2 or 3 different side missions, and you have to complete a certain amount of them before you can go on to the next main campaign mission. The one thing I don't really like in terms of like how the missions work and kind of that type of stuff is some missions require you to bring specific people along because like they're needed for the story, so you obviously have to have them. And also for certain side missions, you can only bring one person per like chapter on a side mission. So if you use someone on one side mission and you're in the same chapter, you can't use them on other side missions. And so, I want my 4 heroes. I was pretty much just trying to keep it simple. I had my 4 heroes. I just wanted to keep bringing them to everything. Honestly, I know it's probably not the best, but I was just really wanting to just only use them. But sometimes it kept making me not use them solely because it didn't want me to use them. You can also find loot boxes during missions, and you can also get them by completing the main objectives or some side objectives that sometimes pop up that are like, oh, try to beat this in 15 turns or less. And when you open these after, obviously the mission is over, they give you random weapon or armor parts, and they all have different stats or abilities and whatnot. And so each character, there's actually a decent amount of customization in this. Everyone's like primary and secondary, and like their grenade attachment and their armor and their helmets. There's a ton of stuff to, kind of mix and match with stats and stuff like that. The thing is, though, for me, it didn't get overwhelming. It just kind of got boring because I just kept getting so many attachments, and a lot of the times they were just real small stat changes. And I know, obviously, the further you get, you can find more rare gear, and, for the first, boss that you beat, like you get a legendary, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. But then even then, the legendary, all I got, it gave me like a bunch of extra damage and then reduced my ammo. So it's still not like something super unique, but I mean, it is cool. And if you want to get into like the harder difficulties and stuff like that, I know min-maxing your characters is a huge part of this game. For me, I personally, it felt like it was so much, it was throwing so many attachments at me, and it kind of felt min-maxy where I didn't really want to worry about it too much, but obviously that's just me. Another complaint I have with the system is the loot boxes are completely random. You can't trade them, you can't disenchant them, so sometimes you might get something that, is for type of people you're not really using or want, and you're just out of luck. There's not much you can do. But obviously the more you play, you will get more loot boxes, but you just have to get further in the campaign. There's not like a way to, play past missions, at least not that I know. And kind of side note with the customization, you can also customize and color your weapons and your armor, and it's all just pre-unlocked. It's not like you have to like pay or anything like that. And they actually show up not only in game, obviously, but in the cutscenes, and that's pretty cool. So naturally, I just turned my entire squad blue, and I gave them all blue weapons, and just because why not? And that was really cool. I thought that was the customization side in terms of the cosmetics. Also, if you put armor on or helmets on, you can actually make it where it doesn't show. So like I have helmets on all my characters, but I have an option for each of them where it doesn't actually show their helmet. So like the stat wise they have it, but it doesn't look like it. So the customization with the cosmetics is actually pretty cool in this game. For each character, you can also level them up, and they get skill points, and everybody has a different skill tree for, depending on what type of character they are. So, for a sniper, they'll have a different skill tree than, a more tanky person. So, as an example, I made one of my guys super tanky, and he regens health, every time he gets a kill or at the beginning of the turn, and if he dies, he'll, like, instantly revive himself. And then I have, like, my sniper kind of focused more on just dealing as much damage as possible per shot. So, I really like that part. It makes them feel a lot unique, and you can kind of figure it out, and that's pretty sweet. And then also you unlock like reset tokens if you ever want to, reset people. In terms of boss fights, the game has a bunch of actually really interesting boss fights. I'm just going to talk about the first one because I don't want to spoil too much. And obviously I haven't played some of the later ones. But like the first one had these like mini guns and you had to like shoot them separately as if they were like separate, enemies. And then they had like a tank on the back of them. And if you shot the tank, he would turn around and, he started cornering my people and stuff like that. And it was a long boss fight, and actually it was really satisfying. The entire boss fight well thought out, and it felt really great, and I really enjoy the bosses in this game. In terms of the story's decent. It's nothing special. It's kind of your just stereotypical end of the world enemy. The enemies are attacking humanity. It is kind of interesting because there is like kind of this corruptness and this kind of like gray area aspect of your team pretty much, and your leaders and your commanders and whatnot, because it pretty much is the very beginning of the game, so it's not a spoiler. The big commander guy is pretty much just like bombing areas, even if it's hitting civilians, in order to kill the enemies. So there's kind of like this gray area aspect, which I think is pretty nice, and it doesn't make things just full black and white. But other than that, story's just all right. The cutscenes are pretty decent and nice. At the beginning they were kind of glitching for me, but I don't know if that's because I uncapped my cutscene frame rate. It might be, but it feels like a AAA title game. The game is $60 full priced, and it feels like it deserves to be like that. It's got its set pieces, it's got its 25-hour game length plus end game content. I know you can play on a harder difficulty after you beat the game. And there's also some like special like veteran difficulty missions where it has you kind of try to farm for legendary loot and get better loot to get geared up, and then you play a super hard mission. So there's a lot of end game content there if you want it. As to if it is the best, I don't know, because obviously I haven't got there. I just know it's there. But it does feel like a good AAA title game. And I think for something, that obviously we haven't gotten a Gears Tactics game before. And I think at first a lot of people were worried it was going to just be like a reskinned XCOM. But I do feel like it carries the, Gears kind of franchise well. And it makes itself its own unique tactics genre. And I'm really excited to see. I don't know if this is just going to be a one-off or if they're going to make more of this, but I could definitely see them doing more, and I think that it is unique enough, and I think it's selling well and doing well enough for them to do that. So I'm really excited, and so overall I really enjoy this game, and I would highly recommend it, especially if you are a fan of tactics genre, because it's interesting to see how different it plays from XCOM and other, games in the genre. So if you have played this game or just, from watching gameplay, I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments down below. Let me know. I love talking with you guys. And if you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to see more content. There's about 2 game reviews a week. I try to give you guys a ton of content. Also, if you can't get enough of me, I have a podcast called Media Crash Out where we talk about, different things in pop culture and just our experiences with it. And yeah, so if you guys are having a great day today, I hope you continue having a great day. If you guys aren't having a great day, I hope you guys start having a great day. But either way, guys, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. See you guys next time.